Hi everybody, I've just had a special birthday and this was my special birthday present. 2 days down at the Wildfowl and Wetland Trust Reserve at Slimbridge in Gloucestershire near Bristol. It was a fantastic couple of days, and this is really just a video to give you an overview of the reserve. At the beginning you saw the bust of Sir Peter Scott, who founded the WWT, the Wildfowl and Wetland Trust. It's a massive reserve, it's 700 acres, and there is such a lot to see. There is a lot of the natural wildlife of the Severn Estuary, but also there's a wonderful collection of wildfowl that have been built up over the years from around the world. There's also some lovely North American river otters to see, and there's also an amphibian collection which is quite interesting. So you need to allow yourself plenty of time if you're going to have a visit here. And I guess like most of the WWT places, they change every month. There's so much to see at different times of the year. This is one of the most important places, the restaurant. Lovely food, nice warming cups of tea, and while you're having them you can look out over the Caribbean flamingos. So pink. That is, if you like pink. There's a lovely big shop as well at the reserve. But one of the most important things before you go out in the reserve is to check this board, because there's lots of things that go on every day, and if you want to see any of them particular, you need to check this and what times there are. I'm afraid we came across this miserable old guy on a scooter. Thankfully we were able to hire scooters for 2 days, so I didn't have to take mine down there because I wouldn't have had anywhere to charge it anyway. This was our first port of call. It's the Peng Observatory. If you know Welney, it's a bit like the main observatory there. You're behind glass, and this is where they have the swan feeds in this area. Lots of Buick swans. Well, I say lots of, just over 40 there were there. It's been one of the lowest numbers they've had for a long time. This is due to climate change. They're coming later, going away earlier. Lots of pintail on the reserve, like this one here. And there are something like 15 hides to view the wildlife from. And this was one brilliant observation we had of a water rail. There were 3 on show actually, and on the reserve today, and they seem to be quite fearless here. So we've got some good shots of a water rail. And then these missel thrushes. Some of the hides are quite difficult for me because there was no benches in them and I can't stand for very long, and some were very narrow and had steps up which were quite difficult. But for anybody who's fairly fit and able, you'll be able to get into any of the hides, and they're all worth checking. And you have to look carefully because there'll be large numbers of geese about. Here's some mistletoe that we saw. And you have to look carefully because there are all sorts of birds there, like these barnacle geese, and there are about half a dozen cranes, common cranes, mixed around with them. But also there were some grey-leg geese, but also had some white-fronted geese mixed in with them. This was a buzzard that we saw hiding away, hoping for something to come within its reach. And this is a view from the Holden Tower hide. It's an elevated hide and looks out across the River Severn estuary. It doesn't look as if there's very much here at the moment, but it does change from hour to hour. In one of the other hides that we went to later on, we saw a large skein of barnacle geese feeding, but in amongst them was one solitary red-breasted goose. Whether it was an escapee or a vagrant, I don't know, but it pays to look very carefully at the birds that were about. Obviously, as the winter progresses and gets colder, these places will be full of birds. We spent 2 whole days looking around the reserve, and I don't even think that was quite enough. Here were some grey-leg geese, and this was a point in question because there are a few white-fronted geese amongst them. And I think there were about 37 of them on the reserve the first day we were there. There's some curlew here with some Canada geese. Lots of interesting little paths to follow. And this, I guess, is one of the star pieces there. It's a 7-view observatory. I didn't actually go up there, but Jan went up there and she took these views down, looking down at the reserve. Most of what you see here is part of the wildfowl collection. And that in itself is worth looking at because there are birds from all over the world and some that you may never see. And there's also a lot of interesting birds from this country that are quite rare, but they're quite easy to see here. So it does give you a chance to see them and perhaps prepare for the day when you do see one out in the wild. Amazing view from the top here, looking out again over the River Severn estuary and the reserve. You can see there the Garden of Remembrance. There'll be, as usual, lots of smaller videos that we'll put on the channel over the next week or so, showing the various things that we saw in more detail. This is just a general overview of the reserve, looking down on the Caribbean flamingos there again. There are several different types of flamingos there, and they have a very strong captive breeding program. And this was the late afternoon swan feed. Very interesting, and there'll be a full video on that. Anyway, I'll let you watch the rest of the video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now, and we'll see you again soon.
Okay, well hopefully you're able to pick up the microphone from this point.